the world has been watching in horror at the violence being committed against the Rohingya people of Burma. Here to discuss that with us now is Simon Billenness. He is Executive Director of the International Campaign for the Rohingya, and he is in the studio with me. Simon, first of all, thanks for coming in.
And thank you for having me.
So it's been awful to watch what's going on with the Rohingya people. Could you give us, if you would, a brief update on the situation there?
Well, right now we're seeing what the UN Human Rights Chief has been calling a textbook case of ethnic cleansing. The Burmese army, since August 25th, have been waging a merciless offensive against Rohingya communities, against men, women, and children. And right now, the estimates are that 370,000 Rohingya have fled to Bangladesh as refugees. And that's 1/3 of the Rohingya population of Burma.
So that is part of what makes it an ethnic cleansing. They're literally driving the Rohingya people out of Burma. And so for those who might not know, the Rohingya people, as I understand it, are both an ethnic and a religious minority in Burma, correct?
That's correct. They're one of many ethnic minorities in Burma. You know, Burma is about, 1/2 to 2/3 ethnic Burman. And there are dozens of other ethnic minorities, the Karen, the Kachin, the Shan, and the Rohingya are one of those. But it's also true that they are the ethnic minority that is predominantly Muslim. And so there's a level of ethnic prejudice against them and also religious prejudice.
So what triggered this latest wave of violence? Or has it been, I think my sense is it's been simmering, it has sparked up, diminished, and now it's essentially exploded. Is that an accurate picture? And if so, what triggered it?
Yeah, I mean, what triggered it was there was an attack, by a handful of Rohingya armed soldiers, essentially. They attacked a dozen Burmese police stations. And in response to that, the Burmese army launched this, wholly disproportionate attack on civilians, again, on men, women, and children, burning down villages and driving people out of their homes.
So I may be asking you to speculate too much here, but was there any sense that they had in effect been waiting for the excuse to do this? Given the enormity of the response, the systematic ethnic cleansing nature of the response, was this something that maybe they'd been looking for a triggering incident or a Reichstag fire, if you will, to do this? Or is it just a spontaneous act of violence?
Well, I think that it's very clear that once this attack occurred on these police stations, the Burmese army, the Burmese security forces, saw this as an excellent excuse to launch this full-scale offensive against the Rohingya. So yes, I think this is this was the army taking advantage of the situation.
And just to be clear, before this incident happened, there had been a number of years of incidents of violence conducted by the Burmese army against ethnic minorities, including the Rohingya people, right?
Yeah, the history of Burma since independence from the British has been, a history of on-again, off-again military conflict between the Burmese army and all the different ethnic minority peoples. And so, we actually see similar military attacks on civilians in Kachin State, in Karen State, in Shan State. But this is no different from that, except for the fact it's on an extraordinarily large scale compared to that.
And I've covered a little bit of a Burma story, not the Rohingya story, but I interviewed refugee monks who had led the uprising. who wound up actually in my hometown of Utica, New York, but and done a little bit of reporting on Burma, but I don't claim to have a great grasp of it. But my understanding is the military has ran the country for some time, and there's now a civilian government. But what is the exact nature of the relationship between the military and the civilian government in Burma?
Yeah, and what you have right now is there was a constitution that was written by the military and pushed through in 2007. And this constitution, enshrines military power in a number of key ways. For instance, the head of the army appoints the defense minister, the home affairs minister who oversees security, and also the border control minister. So all the security forces are completely insulated from any kind of civilian oversight or control. And also there's a provision in the Constitution that allows the army at any time to declare a state of emergency and just dissolve the legislature and dissolve the government. So, it's basically a constitutional coup in the exact sense of the term.
And I think this is relevant for and again, we're talking with Simon Billenness, who is Executive Director of the International Campaign for the Rohingya. I think this is important because I think this gets to, as we in this country respond to the horrific events rolling out there right now, in terms of understanding how we should respond, where we should respond, and what precisely is going on, because knowledge is the first step to effective response. For example, there's been a lot of frustration over the lack of a clear statement from Aung San Suu Kyi, who is, as many people know, Nobel Prize winner, was imprisoned by the military for many years, democratic leader there, clearly, of course, a member of the ethnic and religious minority there, and people have been calling upon her to make a statement, which she has not done. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's important to understand the political situation that Aung San Suu Kyi is in, not to excuse any of her actions or any of her words, but to understand what power she does have and what power she doesn't have. I mean, right now she leads a party that has a majority in the parliament, and she is the parliament also elected a member of the NLD to be president of Burma. She's prevented from being president by the Constitution because she was married to a foreigner. But she created this position called state councillor, and she's seen as the de facto leader. And also she's the foreign minister as well. So she's responsible for what Burma does at the United Nations, for instance, and in terms of diplomatic affairs. So, even though she's got no control over the army, and even though the army has 25% of the seats in parliament reserved to them, she is got severe limits on her power because of the way this constitution was written up by the army itself.
So number one, any authority she would have, and of course it would be reassuring to see her do this, but any authority she would have would pretty much be just moral authority, number one, right? I mean, she can't order the army to stop massacring or conducting ethnic cleansing against any group, including the Rohingya. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, she has tremendous moral authority because she clearly, as was demonstrated in the elections, has the votes and the support of the majority of the population of Burma. And so she's got moral authority, and she has, some popular democratic authority. But, democratic authority has, severe limits in Burma, because of the Constitution.
And to what extent, and this is an important question, I think, on several levels, okay, to what extent, I've heard people say, well, and again, not to defend her necessarily, but if Aung San Suu Kyi made a definitive statement against these attacks, that she would lose enormous political power because, in fact, this hostility toward the Rohingya and even this program of ethnic cleansing is popular among the ethnic majority that is her base. But I don't know if that's true or not. If it's true, it affects not only how we see her, but how we might want to strategize to bring this situation to an end. Is it your understanding that that is true, that this is a popular move among ethnic Burmese?
Well, it's very true that in Burmese society there's pervasive prejudice against the Rohingya and pervasive prejudice against Muslims. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the few ways that the army can do something that's popular. This is a way that the army can put, Aung San Suu Kyi in this very tough position, and also at the same time bolster their power. There's been calls by some, pro-military supporters for martial law in Rakhine State, which could lead to martial law in other parts of the country. And this is a way that the army has been actually very smart in undermining Aung San Suu Kyi, undermining the democracy movement, and getting some actual semblance of popular support that they've always lacked.
So in a sense, it's kind of a Trumpian move. It's kind of a Donald Trump move of divide and conquer. And maybe the analogy is inapt in that, majority of white Americans probably aren't thrilled with Trump's white nationalism, but I think this informs and influences how we might want to think about responding to this, because obviously we who care about this situation want to do something about it. Clearly we all need to support humanitarian aid of any kind that's needed to address the suffering that the Rohingya people are going through right now. That's one, but the other is we need to think about how we want to press our own government to respond, right?
Exactly. And I think the key thing here is, is understanding, how we can put pressure on the Burmese army, directly and indirectly. I mean, right now, there's efforts in the Senate to, in the Defense Authorization Bill, to remove the provision for U.S. military assistance and engagement with the Burmese army. And so, we're calling this like defund Burma's army. Mm-hmm. There's similar moves right now in the UK, also to cut off these programs by the UK government that assist the Burmese army. That's like number one. Stop our taxpayer dollars from going to the Burmese army. The second thing is, the Burmese army owns a lot of businesses, and that's where they get a lot of money. Mm-hmm. The trade in jade, the trade in rubies. These are two commodities that the army, controls the extraction, the processing, the trade of these gems. And so we're going to be going to major jewelers to say, do not buy jade or rubies mined in Burma unless you can demonstrate that all along the supply chain there was no military involvement or business making. And that's one way of starting to sort of hit them in the pocketbook too, through our own consumer action and so forth.
No, I think that's excellent and very important. And I've also heard, by the way, I don't know if it's still true or not, but I've also heard that the Burmese army is also involved in the heroin trade. And I'm not bringing that up because of opportunities for boycott, but because I think it shows us something about their character if it's true.
I mean, that's true. I mean, the armies, the Burmese army's business interests include a whole witch's brew of unsavory characters. Military-owned companies, also former or current drug trade kingpins, and just basic corrupt business cronies who've always supported the military.
So in terms of activism, humanitarian relief is one. Supporting the defund Burma's army is a second one. Boycott is a third one, unless I mentioned that already. And is there anything we've overlooked, and where can people go to find out more about this?
Yeah, you can definitely come to our website, the website of the International Campaign for the Rohingya. And we're developing a full range of actions that people can take. There are resolutions and amendments in the Senate and the House. We're also getting people to write directly to Secretary Tillerson to get the State Department to take a tougher line. But also we are going to be looking at all these other corporate campaign, consumer boycott tactics that we used so successfully before to get companies out of Burma. In the same way we got companies out of South Africa during the apartheid years. So there's all kinds of things that people can do in terms of lobbying their government and also lobbying and using their consumer clout with any kind of companies that have connections to the Burmese army.
All right, well, very good. I encourage people to do that, to go and check out your website, get more information, and get more active. And Simon Billenness, thanks for your good work in this area as Executive Director of the International Campaign for the Rohingya, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.